on the back table, and we're looking at Brother Aubrey Johnson's book on the Barnabas factor and the problem of discouragement. And we've been looking at encouragement as a biblical. Well, I think he described it as a biblical ministry, a work that some people are natural encouragers, while for many of us, being an encourager is more difficult. But it is something that can be learned. It can be learned, and so there's the background. But we look at the problem of discouragement in the opening line, and there's some things probably we're going to have to kind of separate in our minds with regard to exactly what it is that we're talking about. But he says, discouragement is the stage a person has reached when he has consciously or unconsciously decided there is little or no hope. And about 2 lines down below that, it says, when people feel this way, they either anticipate failure, which causes them to perform poorly, or they simply give up, despairing of any chance to succeed. And we can see this in just about every facet of life. For example, teams, for example, sports teams that have not developed the ability to win consistently or to have an attitude to win, invariably will lose every close game. The chips will be down. Somebody will make a mistake or not perform up to their ability. Or they're worried about not losing as they are more than they are about winning, and invariably they will not perform up even to no matter how bad they are, they will be worse in a close situation. But then there are teams that know how to win. I cannot help but think about. And I don't like them, but man, the New England Patriots know how to win football games. I mean, yeah, they've lost 3 Super Bowls, but they've won 6, and they've won some really close ones, and they've lost some really close ones right at the end of the game. But you think about sports teams that know how to win, and in our lives we have to learn how. We have to learn how to win, or we have to learn how to succeed, so that in times of difficulty we can still expect to succeed. And we want to be able to perform in whatever aspect of life that we're talking about in a way that I wouldn't use the word guarantees, but in a way that enhances the ability that we have to be successful. But you look at people who are not used to winning, and in whatever situation their life may find themselves, they expect to lose. They expect to get beat. They expect to get beat down. They expect to fail. And when we expect to fail, failure is almost an inevitability. And then you look in the second paragraph that hopelessness is usually a mistaken perception. In other words, the team that loses every close game could very easily win those games, but they have a flawed focus. In other words, they don't keep their eye on the prize. They don't keep their eye on the task at hand. The problem is an inability to see the possible choices for making positive change in their situation. Discouragement is the result of a flawed focus. By the way, here's something for you to think about as we think about really serious matters. There's an old statistic, and technically it's true, but it's misinterpreted, is that 1/2 of all marriages end in divorce. Right? That is a statistical reality, that 1/2 of all marriages end in divorce. The misapplication of that statistic is that 1/2 of all people who marry will divorce. That's not true. In fact, the number is almost 70%. At one time, the number was almost 70% of people who were married were still married to their original mate. So how do you end up with 70% of people who are still married for the first time, but half of all marriages end in divorce? Well, you got your Elizabeth Taylors in that group, married about 8 or 9 times. Mickey Rooney, married about 9 times. And you see, and by the way, there are a lot of people that don't live in Hollywood that have been married and divorced a lot. All right? But you take one guy who's been divorced 3 times. That means that there are what? There are still 3 other couples that are married for the first time, right? Because you got to get 3 and you got to get 6. So for every person that's been married 3 times, there's 3 other couples that are still with their original spouse. You say, well, Todd, what does this have to do with discouragement? Well, what happens is people don't learn how to succeed. They don't know how to persevere in times of difficulty. And when their marriage hits a difficult spell, what is their solution? What? Get out of it. Divorce. And so let's just say here's a pair. They're in their first marriage and they've been married a little while, and then times get difficult. Now, in their mind, the solution is what? Well, we'll just divorce. This is not working out. And they think that's the only solution. But obviously there are a lot of other solutions, but they just don't see them. They don't understand. Maybe they weren't taught them. Maybe they both came from families that there were a lot of weddings and divorces, and that's all they've ever known. And so that's what they pursue, because that's the only way that they can focus. It doesn't occur to them that, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm a little bit selfish. Maybe I'm a lot selfish. Maybe I can do some things to make my marriage better and save it. But no, all I see is divorce is the way out, and then they just repeat those same mistakes. In other words, they're destined for failure because their focus is flawed. All right, and so there are a lot. So I tell you that to help us understand that there's a lot of ways in which discouragement manifests itself in our everyday lives. By the way, you ever know somebody that's had about 15 or 20 jobs? I'm not going to call any names because this is being streamed live. Plus, almost everybody in this room knows the person I'm talking about. But one time I was going through a Facebook profile just on a lark, and I was looking at this person, and this person had listed their job history on, like if you go to my Facebook page, it'll say, former associate minister and song leader at Eastwood Street in Paris, Tennessee. But I don't have like the other congregations where I've worked or my job at the co-op before I entered in full-time ministry. She had every job she'd ever held. And like in 18 years, she'd had 18 employers. I mean, it was like 2001 to 2002, boom. 2002 to 2003, different. 2003 to 2004, different. Now, I figured this person's probably not getting rehired. That's what I'm guessing. But we all know people who, if their job doesn't go just right, I'll just quit and I'll go find another job. They get discouraged. They don't see any way out except to just quit. And so, a flawed focus. But I also want to mention this, and I wrote this out to the side because I thought about this, that sometimes discouragement could be caused by a lack of faith. Discouragement can be caused by a lack of faith. Question: was Elijah discouraged? Was Elijah discouraged? Yeah. In other words, I'm the only guy left on the planet to serve you, Lord, and they're trying to kill me. And I ain't got nothing to eat. Lord, just go ahead and just kill me right here and put me out of my misery. He was discouraged. And by the way, he had some good reasons to be discouraged, right? I mean, he had some legitimate issues that he was having to deal with. But what did the Lord say? No, you're not the only one. there's 7,000 men who still haven't bowed the knee to Baal, and here comes some birds with you some bread. Here's you something. Here's you something to eat. And in one of the cases, he took some food, and the Bible says he went in the strength of that food 40 days. In other words, God sustained him with one meal for 40 days. So there are a lot of things going on there. Elijah had a faith problem. His faith wasn't strong enough in that particular case. But everything God did to help him was not just to put a salve on his wound, but to heal him and to show him that things weren't as bad as he thought they were. By the way, preachers are notorious for developing the Elijah syndrome. I know, because I am one. And I know a lot of them. And I know a lot of guys that get discouraged. And when they get discouraged, everything about the church is bad. The church where they're working, it's bad. And the church in general is bad. I'll never forget the story that Brother Woodson told, that he was at a congregation. I don't remember which one he was. He did, and as a matter of fact, I don't even think he mentioned it. But he said that he was a younger preacher at the time, and he said he came in and he told Miss Jean, that's his wife, he told Miss Jean, he says, I've had it. I'm leaving. I'm gonna go find somewhere else to preach. And then he just kind of went on a little rant about everything that was wrong. Everything that he perceived was wrong. And these are his words. He said, and Jean said to me, your problem is you're only looking out of one eye. Then she commenced to tell me, these are good people. They're well respected in the community. Our attendance is consistent. Our giving is good. And she went on to list all the good things that she could think of about that congregation. And he said, and when she got done, I was a convert. He said, and I stayed 7 more years. He said, and then after I left, I came back and served that congregation again. But what had happened? He got discouraged. And when he got discouraged, all he could see was the negative. He couldn't find his way through to see the good. And that's just a danger of discouragement. So a lack of faith can be a source of discouragement. A lack of conviction can lead to discouragement. A lack of courage can lead to discouragement. And so discouragement can be caused by a number of things and manifest in a number of different ways. Now look, when I'm talking about discouragement, this is what I was getting at the beginning. When I'm talking about discouragement, I'll just give you an example. When I was working at the co-op in Laverne, Rhonda and I were living there in Laverne, and I had a pretty good job. It wasn't the best, and it wasn't that I didn't enjoy it. I just wanted more, and I couldn't see myself moving forward, where I was. And I thought, I'm going to need to go. I need to go find another place to work. And so I talked to a company over in Brentwood, and I talked to a company up in downtown Nashville, and in none of those situations. Well, one situation I was offered a job, but I just at the end of it, I just didn't think it was the job I wanted, and so I was discouraged. I thought I wanted that job, and they offered it to me, but the more I thought about it, I didn't want to go there, and I was kind of discouraged. And then 2 other places I looked at, and one of them I got another job offer, but they wanted to pay me like $2 an hour less than I was making then. I was only making $7.50 then. And so I was like, that was discouraging. And then had another place that I really wanted to work, and they didn't offer me a job. So there are times when you can be temporarily discouraged. But I didn't have any reason to just be down in the dumps, because I still had a pretty good job, and I got all the hours I wanted and all that. I'm not talking about temporary setbacks. We're all going to be discouraged at any given point in time. I'm talking about the kind of discouragement that just leads to a general malaise in life. That just seems to put a black cloud over everything in our life. If you remember the old, the second set of Flintstones cartoons, there was a character named Bad Luck Schleprock. And everywhere he went, there was a black cloud raining on him. Everywhere he walked, there was a black cloud raining on him. He was bad luck, and he was not a very happy character. And so that's the type of discouragement that no matter how bright the sun is, it's always raining. That's what I'm talking about. So we're not just talking about temporary setbacks of work nature. Even look, our families can be, our family life can be discouraging at times. Our work situations can be discouraging at times. There are a lot of things that can be discouraging, but I'm not talking about something that I'm going to get over in 3 or 4 days, or something that I ought to get over in 3 or 4 days. I'm talking about something that just really becomes a life-defining situation. Now, last paragraph on that opening page. Discouraged people, again, talking in the sense that the overall sense, frequently do not like themselves, can be overheard mumbling self-directed put-downs. In reality, they are prone to overemphasize their human imperfections and overreact whenever they make a mistake. In other words, a small matter just gets blown up into, I can never do anything right. I make a small mistake, but my response to that is, I can't do anything right. There are people like that. I can't do anything right. All right, and so that's the self-doubt starting to creep in. And then it says, disheartened people are often lonely because their pessimism results in an unpleasant personality that drives other people away. Nobody wants to be around a chronic complainer, or nobody wants to be around a person who always sees the negative, in every single situation. And then further down, many times they see themselves as victims and are more likely to turn to artificial forms of courage like alcohol to find relief from their loneliness and pain. But on top of page 36, the discouraged person perceives life as being unfair. He thinks success and failure are more of a result of circumstance than stamina, or they value fate more than fortitude. In other words, you hear a lot in the political talk of the day about millionaires. All millionaires are evil. All millionaires are greedy. All millionaires got to be millionaires by standing on somebody else's head to get to where they are. All right. Let me just give y'all just a real quick statement here. When I retire, I hope to be a millionaire. All right? Now, y'all can laugh, but I've been putting it down on paper, and I full well expect to be a millionaire. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to have $1 million in cash in the bank. But when I retire, I fully expect to have close to $1 million in cash in the bank and close to $1 million in assets. That's my plan, and I'm working that plan. All right? Now, I don't think anybody would accuse me of being a thief. They might, but I don't. But the point is that, let's just be honest, $1 million or $1 million in assets is a lot, but it ain't near like it's not near what it used to be, right? All right? But this idea of all millionaires are greedy, all millionaires, are thieves, all millionaires, or here's the one, all millionaires, they just all inherited their money. They never had to work for it. All this class warfare stuff about, the us versus them. That's just garbage. That's just garbage. They're trying to create envy in people in order to get an us versus them mentality. Right? Right? And so, politicians are really, a lot of them, are trying to gain support by discouraging people. Yeah, they're trying to discourage people. In other words, look at what he's got. You should have that. Doesn't matter the fact that guy worked 80 hours a week for 40 years to get what he's got, and and your hands are allergic to a hoe handle. We can't figure all that. Can't figure all that in. Doesn't matter that guy went and got an education and worked hard, and you dropped out of school when you were 15. That might have something to do with it. By the way, statistically speaking, almost everybody that's a millionaire now was not a millionaire 20 years ago, and in 20 years, half of the millionaires will not be millionaires. There is an extreme amount of fluidity of people who are worth $1 million in this country. That just goes to show you it's not what it used to be. But the point is, people just get this mentality. Well, so-and-so's got something, I don't have it. And then they just allow that to taint their entire view of life. In other words, this is all circumstance. It's just all fate. There's nothing I could have done to improve my lot. It's just the way that it is. And that's just garbage. And it's not the right way to think. About other people or about possessions. All right? And so, but people get discouraged, and then everything they see is a zero-sum game. In other words, if I'm going to be happy, then somebody else has got to be made equally unhappy. But it's not a zero-sum game. And so we think about people's attitudes when they get discouraged. And they get, again, flawed focus. They don't understand, many times don't understand how things work. And by the way, it's a whole lot easier to just blame the system than to blame all the bad choices that I made in my life. I'll blame white privilege. For all of my problems. And again, despite the fact that you're a drug addict and you didn't graduate high school. That's my fault, right? That's my fault. And so they see everything as just a matter of fate. And so thus they don't have a proper view of life.
Like you did. I always thought all these people, if it wasn't for all these rich people, I wouldn't have a job.
Well, you had the right view then. Yeah. No poor guy ever gave me a job. No high school drug addict dropout ever gave me a job either. All right? Now, look in the second paragraph. Problems are considered devastating crises rather than challenges or opportunities. I mean, how many, but if you turn that thing around, you think about how many people do we know or we see that overcome what almost seem to be insurmountable obstacles. And they overcome and they succeed. And I'm not talking about money things. I'm just talking about in life in general. I mean, how can you look at Clay Dyer and not be inspired? I mean, you want to talk about a guy dealt a bad hand. He was dealt a bad hand. And yet, man, look what he's made out of himself. Man, there's a 10-minute video of him on YouTube. He was on ESPN. Look, I'm a million times better athlete than Clay Dyer ever thought about being. I ain't never been on ESPN.
I don't know if you're quite the fisherman he is.
But I'm not the fisherman he is. You're exactly right. I can't tie a knot with my tongue. I can't put a hook in my mouth and tie a knot with my tongue, but he can. All right, but there's a guy dealt a very bad hand, overcame, and has really done well in life. But I'm going to tell you something. Clay Dyer is a friend of mine, and I've been places with Clay. And what you see him, if you see him on television or you see him in some public forum, and you hear him talk, and it's always positive. He's not just blowing smoke. Everywhere I've ever been with that guy, that's him. That's him. I'm going to guess Clay Dyer's probably had some periods of discouragement in his life. Just going to throw that out there. All right? But he didn't allow it to beat him. He saw everything as a challenge, everything as an opportunity to show the world, hey, I can do this. And so and so you look at problem. Does anybody here not know who Clay Dyer is? Well, you should, because he's an inspirational character.
He has no legs.
No legs, no arms.
He's got what? One nose, correct?
Yeah, he's got one arm that's about this long right here, down almost to the elbow. Got nothing over here. No legs, and he's a professional fisherman. He can throw a football.
He can throw a football better than I can.
He can throw a perfect spiral football. Like I said, he fishes and he puts the hook in his mouth with the string and ties a knot with his tongue. I mean, hey, he went to a fishing expo one time and won a contest, a casting contest, when nobody thought that he would even know how to pick up a rod and reel. He's an incredible character, and he does motivational speeches all over the country. He's an incredible character, and he was from Hamilton, or he is from Hamilton. Yeah, he drives. He drives. He swims. I mean, the funny story I think I heard somebody told on him that one time he told his dad he wanted a fishing pole. And his dad said, that fishing pole's too expensive. And he said, yeah, but just think of all the money I've saved you on shoes. I mean, that's the kind of character that Clay is. I love that guy. I mean, we've been to ball games together, and he's just a great character. Overcomes unbelievable obstacles. Recently married, and I think moved to Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. But he's always a guy that I think about when I think about somebody that overcomes obstacles, because he's overcome so much. All right. Then the last paragraph, here it is. The courageous person, on the other hand, accepts who he is without being limited by it. He's not controlled by an obsession to compare or compete. He accepts his circumstances as how things are, but not as they have to be. Here's how it is, but it doesn't have to be that way, or it doesn't have to stay. It doesn't have to stay that way. And then this provides the foundation to begin positive movement despite existing difficulties. All right. Man, I don't even want to get started on this one, but because there's just so much here. We haven't even had our first bell yet, have we? All right, well, I'll go ahead and start. Some maybe I can get through this first section on common causes of discouragement. Two of the most common causes of discouragement are misfortunes and mistakes. And although trials are a normal part of life, lack of courage can cause a person to despair when they are encountered. Injury and illness can be overwhelming. Divorce or death of a loved one can be devastating. Unfulfilled dreams, like sores that will not heal. You think about when I see that unfulfilled dreams, I think about people that really want children and can't have them. A year or two ago, I guess probably been 2 summers ago now, I was asked to go and speak at Midway in Jasper on the subject of infertility. That was by the way, they requested a bunch of subjects, and Mark assigned me that subject. And I thought, man, what am I going to do with this? And would you believe there is a ton of stuff in the Bible about infertility, including in the Proverbs. Says there are some things that never say enough. That never say enough. And one of them is the grave, and the other is the barren womb. So even all the way back thousands of years ago, infertility was a problem. You think about Isaac, his first wife, or Jacob, she couldn't have a baby. And he's like, am I God? She says, give me a child, give me a child lest I die. Give me a child lest I die. And he's like, look, am I God? This is not up to me. And so you look at people that and that's one of those things that a lot of people will tend to dwell on. They dream of having a family, and they're not able to have a family, and it just affects everything, their whole view of life. And so unfulfilled dreams can be like sores that will not heal. Also, lack of appreciation is a source of discouragement. Weariness of day-to-day stress, overcommitment can cause mental and physical fatigue that drags a person down. All right, but looking at two things real quick. The first is the matter of misfortunes. Misfortunes. Now, the Joseph that's under consideration here is the Old Testament Joseph. Joseph, the son of Israel. And man, you talk about a guy that had a series of unfortunate events. That's a guy that, first of all, his brothers hated him. And by the way, I don't know how all this family dynamic works. You'll have to ask Brandy, because she and her siblings are always fussing over who's the favorite. And Brandy says she's the favorite. I think Shane thinks he's the favorite. Are you the two that argue about it the most? Yes. Okay. I don't know how the family dynamic thing works, and fortunately Brandy's and her siblings all love one another. But I've got to believe that even though Joseph was obviously his father's favorite, the fact that his brothers hated him had to be a sore spot for him. You can be the favorite, but if you got 11 older brothers and they all hate you, or 10 older brothers and they all hate you, that's got to be hard. That's got to be hard. So he's hated by his brothers, and then of course sold into slavery, and then lied about by Potiphar's wife, and then languished in prison 2 years because the butler forgot to go to the Pharaoh on his behalf after he interpreted his dream. So he languished another 2 years in prison. And then finally he was delivered from prison and enjoyed a place of prominence. But Brother Johnson says Joseph is the epitome of bloom where you are planted. Because everywhere Joseph found himself, he was successful. Even when he was in jail, he was successful. He found favor with the jailer. He found favor with his fellow prison mates, and so, but he had a series of misfortunes with regard to his family, with regard to his employer, and yet, I would assume that there were times that certainly after the butler left, Joseph has got to be thinking, man, I'm fixing to get out of here. They're going to spring me out of here next week. And then a week goes by, and another week, and another week, and then a month, and then a year, and then 2 years. I'm sure at some point he had to be discouraged. But he never allowed himself to be dominated by his discouragement. By the way, let me ask you this question. There's nothing in the Bible about this, but let me ask you a question. When Joseph got out of prison and was elevated up to where Pharaoh put everything under his hands, do you think Joseph ever saw that butler again?
Oh, yeah.
Had to. How do you think he treated him?
Fairly.
Yeah.
Kind.
Yeah, I can't see Joseph treating him as anything else than with dignity and respect and kindness, in spite of the fact that man just simply made a mistake that cost him 2 years of his life in prison. But what was Joseph able to see? Joseph was able to look back on the whole thing and look like, what? If I'd have got out of here 2 years ago, I might not be where I am today. And by the way, when you get to the very end of his story, so to speak, and his brothers, after his dad dies, and his brothers, they're afraid. Well, now Dad's dead. He's going to kill all of us. He's just been waiting for Dad to die so he can kill all of us. And then they made up a story. Said, Dad told us to tell you to be nice to us. That's basically what they did. Dad told us to tell you to be nice to us. Obviously it was a lie. He knew it was a lie, but what did he say? He said, look. He said, it's not my place. He said, everything y'all did to me, you meant for evil, but God meant it, what? For good. That is the picture of the life and the attitude of Joseph. From when we're introduced to him till the end of the story in Genesis 50, that's the picture of a guy who never allowed himself to be discouraged because of misfortune. Great example for us. All right, next week we're going to pick up with mistakes that cause discouragement. But we're going to go on the flip side. We're going to talk about Judas. All right.